Welcome to the ORSC and Agile webinar on organizational agility. How can Agile and ORSC help? It's a huge subject. It's attracted massive interest. A lot of people here, as I said, altogether 70 people from 4 different continents have registered. And you're all welcome, whoever's here. My name's Mish Middelmann. I'm an IT guy from before the age of Agile, IT entrepreneur turned coach, turned systems coach, turned coach trainer. And I'm thrilled to be here with Antoinette.
And I hope that tonight gives you the chance to both experience a little bit of ORSC and also see why it makes, can make a big difference as a coach, as an Agile coach, for you to have ORSC experience. I'm not sure what the ratio is between the 2 groups that are here, and I'm sure that there are people here that are neither ORSC coaches nor Agile coaches. So welcome to you too as well. We're going to do a whistle-stop tour through organizational agility before we get you into an ORSC process. Mish, anything that you want to add before we jump into a couple of slides about organizational agility?
Just what I want to say is there's a fabulous richness of people here. Because of time, we're not going to be having individual check-ins, but inviting each of you to check in the chat window if you have access to a keyboard. With like, you don't have to write your name because that's on the thing, but like, where are you from and what do you do? If you have time, do that, but Antoinette's going to go ahead in the meantime.
I'm checking the chat window as well. So I'm going to start and just tell you a little bit about Agile, and please don't think that this is I basically just want to share with you how we got to the point where we are. So Agile started in the software industry, and it really started as a way to develop software better, get products out to clients quicker, and get the products out to them that they really want. And for some of us, we've been around for quite a long time. And what started happening inside organizations was, yes, with the techniques and the way of working that we had in technical teams, we got pretty far in terms of improving our performance, but then we started running into organizational problems. The first thing was that the rest of the organization around us couldn't keep up. It's a little bit like a Ferrari surrounded by a flock of sheep. If the Ferrari can move forwards and backwards really quickly, but can't really go anywhere unless the sheep around him, and I'm not trying to implicate anything about organization. So really what started happening was people realized that there was a need to, from an organizational perspective, also make some changes inside the organization. And this started quite a long time ago. It started probably about 10, 12 years ago already, but it's really picked up speed to now branch into things like business agility, enterprise agility. And I want to give you a taste of enterprise agility. We'll do a process in a second to help you explore it more. But I want to give you a taste about enterprise agility using something that I really like in terms of lenses to look at an organization called the integral model. So the integral model comes from Ken Wilber, and Wilber has tried to create an all-encompassing theory. So I'm going to just share my screen again. The integral model, like all good models, and remember all models are wrong, but some are useful. The integral model looks at the world through the lens of 4 quadrants. So if we look at the first division, there's the subjective, or what I experience, what goes on inside and what cannot be measured. The only way that we can find out what is going on is to ask people about it, and let them share from their perspective what's going on. Versus on the other side, the objective perspective. So the objective perspective is things we can observe, we can measure. It's clear to the, to the naked eye. And it is, there's generally, so if I talk a little bit of ORSC, it's basically consensus reality to some extent as well. So the other two, the other axis is made up of personal or individual experience and collective experience. Okay, so what does this mean for us? It means that if we look at Agile through an integral lens, we've got an I quadrant, which really looks at the mindset and engagement of people, individuals, groups, etc. We've got culture and relationship, which is what's known as the we quadrant. We've got competencies, practice, and products, the it quadrant, okay? And then we've got the organizational architecture and environment, the it quadrant. So here's the thing. When most people hear about Agile or talk about Agile, a lot of their focus is in the it quadrant. So you've ever heard about Scrum? Scrum mostly sits in the it quadrant. Things like stand-ups and boards and, whip and all of those kinds of things, they sit in the it quadrant. And for the longest time, we've actually thought that if you want to go Agile, that's where your focus needs to be. You need to get people in to come and show you how to write stories, do backlogs, do stand-ups, etc., etc. Okay, here's the problem. If that's where our focus is and not on the rest of the integral model, we will never succeed. So if we look at the mindset and engagement, what's really vital there is that leadership needs to buy in. We like personal responsibility in terms of agility. We look at rank, change resilience, career ambition, purpose, engagement, a whole bunch of things, okay? We're not going to look at all of them this evening. We're going to look at one or two of them, okay? But so this is the individual. And there's a particular mindset that we expect people to eventually cultivate if they really want to work with agility. And notice the difference between the term Agile, okay, and the term agility. Okay, so Agile really is those practices, etc., that got a very specific name and grew out of the Agile Manifesto, which is a distillation of the values of the first group of people who started talking about Agile. Okay, then we've got the we quadrant. In the we quadrant, we look at culture and relationship. So here, we need to make sure that the values inside an organization is in line with Agile values, that the culture is in line, with what agility requires. So here for instance, we think in the Agile world, we think about this very often as the move from a top-down culture to a self-managed culture, okay? That includes all of, psychological theory.
Okay, so if we move from the we quadrant to the it quadrant, in the it quadrant, yes, at skills and techniques, we look at different Agile roles, we look at technical practices, we look at Agile and Lean practices, and all. If we look at the it quadrant, then, there's a whole bunch of things, like, for instance, in finance, we would look at how do we work without the constraints of, budgets, because budget gives us upfront planning, etc. So how, if in an Agile organization, how do we do recruitment in HR? How do we do things like performance appraisal? Do we even do performance appraisals? Okay, so the it quadrant is the kind of skills and competencies, and a lot of the time people think that that's really at the heart of what Agile coaches do. And there's some there, but unless you have the other ones on your palette that you're paying from, you are not going to be successful. So then the last one, the organizational architecture environment. So here we look at the organizational altitude. So those of you who are familiar with Lalou's work, we look at value streams. So actually, how does a product flow through an organization before it lands at the customer, you know. So this is the place as well where we often say it's the biggest waste is to build the wrong thing efficiently. If we, you know, how quickly can we make sure what the right thing is for our customer to build? Okay, organizational structure is the one, you know, that, I mean, the first thing that generally jumps to people's mind when they see this is that silos stand in the way of agility. Okay, so governance is another one. Physical environment, you know, do you have, are you spread out over the globe in terms of how your team looks? Or are you physically co-located? Because all of those things have an impact. Okay, so that's like a whistle-stop tour through, you know, if we look through multiple lenses at what we need inside an organization to bring about agility. And we're now going to do a exercise to see what in your environment and what, you know, what in your mind and in your experience are the things that need to change in order to create organizational agility.
If you just listen to the scope and scale of what Antoinette has been sharing, it's huge. It's an enormous, the organization is like a super tanker. It's like there's processes happening on every deck of that super tanker. There are engines, unfortunately not all driving in the same direction in this particular super tanker either. And this is where I think some of the coaching skills start coming in. How do you hear all the voices on all the decks, and the ones that are saying go left and the ones that are saying go right? And of course, the ones who say stop, you can't stop a super tanker instantly. So what we want to share with you now is a tool, since we're more like tugboats that just shift the whole organization bit by bit without having complete control over it at any one time. We're going to share with you a way of hearing many voices, both within ourselves and each other's voices, as we contemplate slowly turning the supertanker. And the thing I'm going to share is that the two of us have really chosen 7 kind of aspects of an organization and organizational agility. They're not the only 7, but they're 7 useful aspects that are worth considering. If you can literally walk yourself around and like put your finger on the word culture or organizational structure, the one you want to go to first, and virtually stand in that space and just give some thought to the questions of in the organization I work with, either my own organization or the one where I'm a coach or a consultant. What is needed? What does agility look like in that zone? Who can I be and what can I do to contribute to whatever is needed? And just take yourself a couple of minutes to actually walk around that circle now, in silence and virtually, just looking at those 7 different aspects of the organization.
So what I've also done is I've shared the Jamboard link so that you can go directly to the Jamboard, because you can ask you to do something. I see there's about 14 people already there. So you can go directly to the Jamboard and also do your walk around inside the Jamboard. But make sure to visit, you know, and really feel what does agility feel like in this particular quadrant or segment.
So what we believe is going on is that you are walking around and exploring these 7 wedges. And what we're inviting you to do over the next minute or so is to decide which one attracts you to explore further, which is the one with the most kind of where you can make the most impact, where impact is most needed in your organization or the organization you're in. And what we need you to do is to actually put your name, not to put this one or here, but to put Jaco or Mish or Martin or Helene or whatever, whoever you are. so that we can help you to meet your mates who are interested in this. So if you can put your names into those wedges and sort of pile them around the outside if you can't quite fit them in the wedges, then Antoinette's going to start preparing a way for you to virtually meet with the people who are interested in the same topic as you. So in a minute, Antoinette is going to send you off into groups. And the purpose of that is for you to meet with people who've decided they're interested in the same aspect of this great big super tanker, and to have a conversation with them. You'll have about 8 minutes to share with each other. So what is it? What does agility look like in this area of the organization? And how do we need to be, and what do we need to do to enable that? So that's your 8-minute conversation. It's up to you to self-facilitate to have a useful conversation in 8 minutes.
Okay, and while you are in the room, if you need our help, there's an option that just says ask for help.
We have a term called cheerful chaos. And I don't know how cheerful you're feeling. Welcoming you back and inviting the first group that's ready to just report out about what you got from this conversation. What really struck you about agility through the organizational agility through the particular lens of your wedge that you were standing in?
So, if I may, I was in the leadership wedge, and I think we kind of agreed that, you know, change, whether it's towards agility or whatever, organizational change starts with leadership. And I think that the dilemma and the concern was, how do you start it? We know you start with mindset, you start with you know, belief systems of the leader. But I think we weren't, and maybe the time wasn't enough, but we didn't quite get to how do you then get leaders to start looking at, you know, the organization from an integral point of view in the 7 wedges.
I've been using the hashtag more questions, less answers lately. And my work with large organizations says the truth that Sivan just named is critical, because when we go in trying to tell the leaders that we know the answer, that gets their backs up. So just the realization that we don't have power over these leaders is often the first step, in my opinion.
Okay, so let's hear from the next wedge.
I'll go. I was the last one to say something there, so I may as well carry on. I don't know if we had any specific agreement or anything like that, but we had quite a few people commenting and inputting on that. And we talked about the command and control culture versus the empowered or I said, you know, empowerment with accountability. That's the different type of things. We talked about mindset. Somebody said something about getting the right mindset of the people. But then there was a really good question about how to keep it like that, because it is a lot of the times it starts off really nice, but when you have to make the numbers, then all of a sudden you have to go back to command and control, or that's the kind of thing that happens. And how do you get it to sort of self-heal almost in some way? The last comment I made in the group was that maybe that's where retrospectives and the ceremony of retrospectives comes in, but it has to happen maybe at a higher level, in a leadership level again, and not just at the bottom, because you need real deep support and not just the say so. I think that's, I hope I summarized it well enough.
Thank you, Gert. Yeah, sticky wedge. You know, culture is not something that you change overnight. There are people that believe that you can't change culture at all. You have to replace it. That's sticky wedge. And unfortunately, one of the stand or fall wedges for an organization if they really want to increase their agility.
I have a story to share about an organization where I'm working, and it's now about 18 months in of coaching teams throughout the organization around culture change. And we're finally working with the EXCO. And I just wanted to mention that, because they're having those very conversations that Gert was talking about. Really difficult conversations about their role in leading the culture. But it has taken 18 months. And a lot of what I take from this is soft hands. Hold the organization with soft hands. It won't turn on a ticky, as they said when I was a kid. It won't make a left turn or a right turn. It will just start to shift.
So I see that Nikki has posted in HR, and thank you, Nikki, for helping us along in terms of time. In HR, we agreed it's harder than initially anticipated. A good suggestion is to look at case studies on how it has been done successfully previously. So there's a real, in terms of agility in the organization, the HR group is actually at service to the rest of the organization. Yet over time, many HR divisions have fallen into organization, into groups of people who really just enforce things. So it's becoming an agile HR organization really means returning to the things that give value to your customers, who are the rest of the organization. So it is, and very often we find that people here are really stuck. So, how about the customer needs?
In customer needs, I was with Elizabeth on the team. The key challenge with agility here was striking the balance between wants and needs, and really understanding what the needs are. So, and also meeting the expectations of customers, that customers expect like a click of a button and everything falls into place, and not necessarily having the understanding of what actually happens in the background. So our key thing was really going into with customers is the need is to listen, to understand, and as well as being in a position where one is willing, like a service provider is willing to let go of what their perceived solutions, because sometimes there is actually a solution. So it's not necessarily that the customers have high or unrealistic demands. So there is a possibility of there's something else on the other side of the coin of what we don't know. I don't know if you want to add, Elizabeth. Yeah.
You've got it. Thanks.
Sharp and clear. Thank you.
So the world that we live in has given us a lot of choice. So as organizations, we need to make sure that if we want to secure customers and keep them happy, that we live very close to them. And that is, in most of especially the larger organizations, the gap between my work and the impact it has on a customer is so far apart that I have no idea of what the impact is of a specific action. So, and over time, you will lose customers like that. So that's where that focus comes from. What about operations?
So Frank and I were the only two in the room, and so I've done some agile work. And I'm just saying, in operations, there are so many divisions within operations, because it obviously is the engine room of a business. And for me, you need to have a good link between the sales team who are delivering into or selling into a customer, and actually what we're delivering in the timelines, because they have an impact on the whole business. So from what the leadership wants to the bottom line, to internal services, or internal service to external service. So all of those key things come into play, and it's about how all the actual gears come together within the operations, and how they seamlessly can hand over from one to the other. That's going to make the difference. And it's having the leaders in those teams that can communicate to make it actually happen, so that it meets all the objectives that you're looking for in an organization.
And if we jump over quickly to the other side, so this is where organizational structure, for instance, can be a real obstacle. If there is still very much hierarchical organization, if there's a lot of silos, things become really difficult in the operations, as in every one of the other wedges. So at a certain point, we need to look at how is our organization structured, and how does it keep the old way of being, whatever that is, how does that keep it in place? The same for finance. If we think about finance, in finance, very often there are big budgets, people have to come up with upfront plans, which means that there's a whole lot of wasted work potentially being done. So in order to create organizational agility, at least these areas need focus. There's more, but at least these areas need focus.
Frank's from the Netherlands. I don't know if you wanted to add to our conversation.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. It's just that I was very interested in what you actually spoke about, like the role of a leader during these sessions. I once witnessed a session in the company's restaurant where about 40 people stood around in a circle, and all the attention went to the head of the department. So I wondered how can leadership give way to the voice of the teams to speak from wisdom and creativity. Yeah.
It's a long and hard journey. One of the big success stories in Agile, Frank, I'm sure you know about ING. Everybody got fired. The entire company got fired. So I don't know what signals more. There's a big change coming as firing each and every person, including the bosses, and everybody has to reapply for jobs in the new structure. And there are people who did reapply, and there are people who left. So there were people who simply could not go through the transition. The higher up in the organization we go, the more difficult it is for people to transition to a more agile way of working, or bigger agility, or an agile mindset. Because what's happened there is now being made obsolete, etc. So we need to have a lot of empathy when we work with leaders. And that's, this feels to me like we can bridge over a little bit to what this was like.
We're slightly truncating a conversation that clearly is in its something infancy. And we're asking you to kind of take a step back and say, so I've had an experience over the last 45 minutes or so. I managed to have some discussion. I managed to share some stuff back into the bigger circle. And kind of what's that been like as an experience for me as a systems worker?
So for me, it's like we're not standing alone. I think it's the levels of maturity within organizations where some have experienced the challenges already and others are still going through it.
So we're not alone. We're hearing and feeling each other in some way. What else?
So Mitch, for me, it's about the fact that communication across all the businesses, or across the whole business, so along all your wedges, that everybody needs to be aligned and everybody needs to be on the same page, going in the same direction. Because if you're not, you're actually defeating the whole object and the purpose of where you're going. So I think it is about having an alignment in the business of where we're going, how we're going, and if we're using agility, it has to be from the top, because I don't think you can move from the bottom without your team, your leaders at the top not being agile. So I think it needs to be a serious, and I see it as in collaboration, but for me, it's also about having a clear alignment of where we're going to and a clear vision.
I feel like you're touching this thing of, so we're trying to get collaboration, we're trying to get communication across real differences, and that logically it's straightforward. Like you just said, there's a clear business case for it. My experience is that organizations are not always logical. And where I found huge value in the ORSC methodologies are that first of all, they're saying emotions are allowed. And second of all, they're saying difference and conflict are allowed. And it's a scary way of opening the lid so that all voices are heard, so that eventually this joining together can come.
So at the heart of Agile is this move from Taylorism, top-down management, to self-organization, using everybody to their fullest potential, bringing your whole self to work. And what we are hinting at is the power that ORSC the approach itself, and the tools and techniques therefore bring to create a space for all of those voices to be heard. So if you think about what you've just gone through, you have learned from one another, you have spoken into the space your view and your understanding of every one of those wedges. Okay? The knowledge comes from the group. So yes, we added a few things here and there, but the knowledge comes from the group. So it becomes a process that can be owned by people who are in the process, rather than a process that is enforced by leadership from above. And the systems awareness that we create when we do that. So, you know, the ability, the approach of ORSC is that there's wisdom in the system, in every single member of the system, which is the same thing that we say in Agile. You know, in Agile, it's all about individuals and interaction. And the left-hand side of the integral Agile model, the I and the we space, is something that we often neglect as Agile coaches, at least. Okay? But so the way that we approach, if we approach a transformation or a transition in an ORSC way, is perfectly aligned with the individuals and interactions at the very least of the Agile Manifesto.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, sometimes I feel like an evangelist, and I think evangelism, you know, it doesn't work for me if people evangelize, and sometimes people are just not ready for it. So I like what you said, Mish, about soft hands. You know, it's like slowly catch the monkey. You can't force anything on these people, and for me, certainly, it takes a lot of courage to step out of the sandwich and approach people who, and continuously approach people whose ear I might not have, but slowly, I don't know.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Just to pick up on that, there's I think you're touching some of what is essentially the coaching approach, which is take people where they are, not defining the endpoint, because you can define the endpoint in a more straightforward process and then deliver. But in these complex processes, it's where are people now? And a huge amount of the ORSC coaching process is how do we hold a mirror to you so that you can decide what's next for you, rather than, as you said, evangelizing and telling people what's next for them.
So the more that you realize that Agile brings a solution before we even know what the problem is, the better you will do. Agile is not the answer. You know, striving for more Agile in an organization, if it doesn't solve the business problem, it's futile.
Yeah, I can echo that. If I can quickly chip in on this side, I think for me in my own journey, I also had to realize that, you know, you talk to people about Agile, but it's about what is it that you're trying to solve? What are you trying to do? And the more I sort of think about it, you've got to first define the problem that you want to solve. And if Agile is the answer, then that is what you do. I wanted to sort of, the problem I find, and it's all great, I like the soft hand, gentle hands, and that's probably something that will work and actually have a sustainable change. The problem, I think, what I'm picking up is that companies that are not Agile, where senior management is not ready for those kind of changes, don't really buy into that. They expect a, you know, I think the word step change is a significant one that we hear quite a lot in business. Step change. So I'll give you 3 months, I'll give you 6 months, I want step change. But we know soft hands, and actually the people asking for it are probably the ones that need the most attention and will not take 6 months to change because their behaviors have to change. Even before that, they have to actually believe that that's the answer. So I think there's a conflict in our businesses that want to sort of have a quick change because of the old style of change management, get it in quickly, and the gentle hands where we know it will be the right way, but how do you play in that middle area? And that's, I think, where a lot of the frustration comes in, and it's really difficult to have the soft hands because that's not what they're asking for.
So beautifully put, thank you. So true. You're holding those two truths. And actually the change model that we use in ORSC is very much to say, we talk about the primary and the secondary. So what is the system currently, what's its current way and what it's currently aware of? And as you said, often it's step change. It's just get it bloody done by this date. And often there's something that new that is emerging, which might be more self-managing, more creative, more innovative, and in fact, what's needed for the business to survive long term. And what we know is systems bounce back and forth between what they're familiar with and the new thing that's emerging. And I mean, my heart goes out to you because you get crunched every time it moves back and forth. We definitely don't have a formula. We have a raising of awareness. And then I think one of the beautiful things in Agile practice is this thing of, so what hat is appropriate for me now? Is it appropriate to facilitate now? Is it appropriate to coach now? Is it appropriate to be the subject matter expert now? And I think bringing in systems coaching just gives weight and depth to you when you are in the emergent coaching mode, but it doesn't solve the problem that sometimes you're still in the delivery mode.
Yeah. I mean, what really appealed to me when I started doing ORSC coaching was the fact that I don't have to coach individuals. I coach the system. So, you know, one of the great helps in situations like this is to if you can create situations where all voices are heard. You know, so when some of the tools that we have in ORSC create the conditions so that the word of a person that reports into somebody, that reports into somebody, that reports into somebody, that reports into a senior manager carries the same weight as the word of the manager. Now, that requires quite a bit of development in the coach, him or herself. You know, so the other reason why I always say to Agile coaches, please just go and do, even if you only do the fundamentals, go do it. It's because of the impact that it has on you as a person. You know, the tools that it gives you, yes, but actually, you know, what it does to you on the inside when you realize that there's no person that's the problem. There's something in the system that's not working properly, and everybody in the system is holding that dysfunction in place. So, you know, I've found, apart from, you know, the change tools, which I love, I've found those kinds of processes really, really useful to create an environment where everybody is willing to speak up, because that very often gives even leaders information that they didn't have before.
So where we are is we've only got 5 minutes left. We're just happy that you've come. And we're happy there have been people from around the world, and there have been people from Agile and people from ORSC and people from all over. And we want to see you again. We want to stay in the conversation with you. We're well aware that we've only just touched it. But what really matters right now is for you to hear each other sharing a few words, literally a few words, like a phrase, not a paragraph, about what you take away from the last hour and 10 minutes.
Hi, this is Frank. Agile and ORSC are brother and sister.
Thank you.
Right, and Ronnie here. When people get together, there's just a powerful generative outcome that results.
So Mitch, my biggest takeout of it is the knowledge comes from the group. And if there isn't a problem with the person, it's actually the system that creates the problem, and that's what your ORSC process will allow to unveil. And it allows opportunity for people to actually grow and allow their voices to be heard.
For me, the marriage of Agile and ORSC is a marriage made in heaven, if there's such a thing. And for me, as an integral practitioner, I loved how you brought that in, you know, just to kind of give it a meaty space, and I completely love integral way of thinking. So I just enjoyed how those three kind of modalities work so beautifully together. And if I may just add, the fourth industrial revolution around the soft skills that are becoming the hard skills, and how that is so much part of all those three modalities. For me, I think that's just spurred on some beautiful thinking for myself as well, and thanks to the group for ideas.
I think there's a lot of interesting points that was raised, and it just really made me curious even more. So it wasn't the first time that I've heard everything, but there's some stuff that really, I'm keen to sort of read more about that, hear more about that, and learn more about that. Thank you.
Somebody who said all seem to be facing similar challenges, and somebody else who said we must solve the business problems. Just that, thank you for that reminder. That is, and that's one of the things I love about Agile. Is Agile doesn't let you forget what's the practical need of the day, and it's healthy. And who else hasn't gone yet?
So I'll go. So what really resonated for me was that we are like the tugboats moving the super tankers into the harbor. So we are the short, stocky, really strong, robust, gently maneuvering this big boat. So that had a lot of resonance for me.
I think one of the most remarkable things when joining a forum like this is that there's such a solution that comes from the collective. We often feel quite ostracized in our issues. And for someone like me, I haven't joined a forum like this before. It's quite daunting, and it's amazing to see the solutions that come, and the issue. It's really bad to say, but the issues that other people have, and you think, oh, okay, cool, you also have that issue, and it's amazing to see that there's so many solutions that come from a collective. So thank you for that.
Antoinette reminded us that Agile is about individuals and interactions, and a reminder around whole selves. We're those whole selves as well, and we're bringing ourselves to this work. So the magic lies in the interactions between ourselves and each other. And there was also questions of where do we start? But the fact is we're all different, unique human beings, and the systems therefore are also unique and different. And you start where you are, as you would want to meet others where they are. And so the magic lies in the interconnectedness, in the spaces between.
Thank you very much. Let you know that if you want to pursue ORSC, it's orsk.co.za. And there's also orskafrica.net, which is kind of customer stories. And I want to thank you, Antoinette, and I want to thank everybody who's been on this call for just bringing a richness of wisdom and experience from around the country and around the world.
It's been lovely. It's been lovely, and I am inspired every time we get together as a group like this. It doesn't matter which system we get together, because I really do believe that the only way that we can go forward in this really complex world is to put our heads together. We long since passed the age where we've got hero leaders, where the hero leader can come up with a solution and execute on it, or let others execute on it. So it's a real gift to be working with people and for us to put our heads together. So thank you for everybody who took part and who are willing to try and learn some stuff. And I really do hope that you have taken something away for you. So.
And celebrating some agility, as we had massive bandwidth challenges and two co-facilitators not being able to hear each other. And this is our lives. And 2020 and beyond is going to carry on like this. So let's get used to it.